Welcome to the Pachehra Talks. My name is Arun and I'm Solutions Architect with Rackspace Technologies, which is a great place to work with. And today we are going to continue in the previous session that we took on data integration. Let me show you the slides that will help you just refresh what we did in the previous video. So in the previous video, we started with understanding Azure Data Factory, and then we started the usage, what it is, why we use it, and then the components of the ADF service that we utilize. And then we talked about the workflows and then the features. And today we are going to talk about the architecture where we are utilizing Azure Data Factory. As you can see on this particular architecture, here we have a data factory and there are different sources. So let's try to understand the architecture first, then we'll try to break it down to the components and then the flow and the pricing for this video. So let's get started. So presented architecture demonstrate a data pipeline that integrates large amount of data from multiple sources into a unified analytic platform in Azure. This design pattern are relevant for many industries requiring advanced analytics of large data sets such as e-commerce, retail, and healthcare. This is a generalized architecture that we are referring to, and this one is borrowed from Microsoft documentation. Why we are looking at it? Because Data Factory is the actually orchestrator for this architecture, and this could be utilized in various industries, as I said, e-commerce, retail, and healthcare. In our example, let's take a scenario where a company wants to improve the insights gained through the data analytics using Azure, because that's what we are doing. We are taking data from all different sources, adding it to the storage account, then analytics synapse, and then to analytics services, then insights through Power BI. Ultimately, that's what we are doing. So as you can see in the architecture, Azure Data Factory is the main piece, which is performing entire orchestration from ingestion to transformation. Let's try to go through this architecture. Data is ingesting from all different sources, various sources, to the blob storage. What sources we are considering here? Just be with me and check one by one. We got SQL, we got relational DB, we got Azure SQL, like the cloud one. Microsoft SQL was the on-prem one. Then we have Cosmos DB, table storage. So ultimately what this is representing is we have various kinds of data, structured, semi-structured, unstructured. That's what it is representing. Now, data incrementally loads from blob storage to Azure Synapse Analytics. This piece, and this piece are both in the pipeline of Data Factory. And data is cleansed and transformed during this process, movement, right, from this place to this place. Now, Azure AD is a very important piece from the security perspective that will be utilized for authentication purpose, of course. And business analytics use Microsoft Power BI to analyze warehoused data. So let's take a look in each component of this architecture to understand this architecture to the core. So as you could see, if I go back, there are different components, and we are going to talk about these components one by one: blob, ADF, Synapse, analytics services, AD, and BI. Okay. So the very first is blob storage, where we are ingesting the data. Blob storage is used to stage source data before it's loaded into Azure Synapse. If you're wondering why not ADL or Azure Data Lake, well, we will in the next video of this module, data lake is something that we are going to design. Okay, so then Azure Data Factory, which orchestrates the transformation of stage data into a common structure in Azure Synapse. Data Factory could use Polybase when loading data into Azure Synapse to maximum throughput because of the parallel threads. Now, Azure Synapse is a distributed system for storing and analyzing large data set. It uses MPP, which is massive parallel processing, uh, which makes it suitable for running high performance analytics. Azure Synapse can use Polybase again to rapidly load data from blob storage. Then we have analysis services, which provides a semantic model for your data. It can also increase system performance when analyzing your data. Power BI, we all know it's a suite of business analytics tools to analyze data and share insights. Power BI can query a semantic model stored in analysis services, or it can query Azure Synapse directly. Azure Active Directory, as we already said, for authentication. Users who connect to the analysis services could be authenticated through Azure AD, or Data Factory can also use Azure AD to authenticate to Azure Synapse through a service principal or managed identity for Azure resources. So now if you go back and see this architecture, it started make a little more sense. The data movement, the cleanse and the transformation, the insights, the authentication, and the orchestration through here. Now let's try to go through some considerations of these things that we are using. The very first, as I said in the previous slide, MPP. The massively parallel processing architecture of Azure Synapse provides scalability and high performance. Azure Synapse has guaranteed SLAs and recommend practices for achieving high availability. When analysis activity is low, the company can scale Azure Synapse on demand, reducing or even pausing compute to lower cost. Azure Analysis Services can be scaled out to reduce response times during high query workloads. You can also separate processing from the query pool so that client queries aren't slowed down by the processing operation. We can disintegrate both things. Now, Azure's Analysis Services also has guaranteed SLAs, Synapse and Analysis both, and recommend practices of achieving high availability, of course, to achieve the SLA. Yeah? Now, Azure Synapse security model provides security connection, authentication, and authorization through Azure AD or SQL Server authentication, and encryption, of course. Azure Analysis Services uses Azure AD for identity management and user authentication that we have already talked about in the previous slide. So these are some important points that we should keep in mind, because these will help us to consider this kind of architecture as per the requirement. So let's check out the pricing concept for this architecture, because this is very important whenever we go and talk to the customer. Most of the time they are after the cost, even though they're looking for the innovation, or maybe at their data center exit is nearby, but of course cost, because somebody is gonna pay, right? You can plan a wonderful analysis services or more secure architecture, but yes, somebody has to pay. So cost is very important, and we do not want to waste a single penny unnecessarily, right? So we got these 4 services that we utilized in this architecture: Synapse, Factory, Analysis Services, Power BI. Let's see how they cost us and how we can save more. So let's start with the Synapse. Synapse allows you to scale your compute and storage levels independently. There you go. So compute resources are charged per hour, and you can scale or pause these resources on demand, so you can save money right there. But storage resources are billed per terabyte, so your cost will increase as you ingest more data. But you can play around with the compute to save the cost. Now, data factory cost as per number of read, write operations, monitoring operations, and orchestration activities performed in a workload. Data factory cost will increase with each additional data stream and the amount of data processed by each one. Then we got analysis services, which is available in various SKUs like developer, basic, and standard tiers. Instances of these various SKUs are priced based on the QPUs. Yes, QPUs, which is query processing units, just like CPU, and available memory. To keep your cost lower, minimize the number of queries you run, how much data they process, and how often they run. And of course, Power BI, which is a different product altogether. Power BI Embedded provides an Azure-based options for embedding Power BI functionality inside your applications. A Power BI Embedded instance is included in the entire price whenever you go and talk to the customer. So yes, this was the end of the video. So we understood Azure Data Factory, designing the integration services, how it actually help us to integrate, transform, and orchestrate the entire analytical architecture. We did go through the architecture, various components, important consideration, and the price model. If you have any comments, if you have any questions and queries, please comment and like, share, and subscribe for upcoming videos. Thank you for watching. You have a good day. Bye-bye.